Welcome to Laptop Radio. Today's topic is going to be labor abuse in startups. We will continue with our stories, and today we have also Bob on the line. Bob is his pseudonym, and we wanted to protect his identity. Hello, Bob.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us about your story?
Sure. So I've been in the industry, in the cryptocurrency industry for the last 3 years, working mostly in ICO projects, initially like, Ethereum-based dApps, and then moved over to Tron and Tron dApps, things like that. But during that time, in my beginning stages, I got to work for John McAfee as his Latin American representative, and kind of exposed to that world, I guess, through his eyes because of just the status that he had and that he held in the cryptocurrency realm. He's kind of considered a rock star, a leader. At the time, he was keynoting every major conference that was being held. I obviously looked at him as a pretty prominent, figure, mentor almost.
McAfee is famous.
Yeah, he's pretty well known for a variety of things. I mean, in the 90s, he did the McAfee antivirus and sold that, I think, in like 94 for 100 million ish, and then kind of went down the free spirit yogi kind of path and moved out to Colorado and kind of purchased this large ranch where he was very introspective and spiritual. And I don't really know. I've just heard rumors on what I've seen on the documentary, kind of. And then
How do you meet him?
I met, so I saw the documentary on Netflix, actually, Gringo, after I would seen a lot of stuff on Twitter. And, he just kind of was, like I said, he was keynoting every event. He was the number one guy in crypto at the time, him and like Vitalik, and so I really wanted to get near the biggest people so I could get, introduced in the industry. I was really interested. And I reached out to his wife through Twitter and started communicating with her and just kind of going back and forth, and I wanted to have him on a podcast that I had. I had a YouTube podcast at the time, and wanted to have them as a guest. She agreed, and then through back and forth talking, she invited me to a conference that he was speaking at in Miami, BC. It was BC Miami 2018, and I went, and that's really where it started. I went and I met them in person. We became friendly through that interaction. He invited me back to his house in Tennessee. They were living in Tennessee, in the middle Tennessee at the time. And so I stayed there with him for a few weeks. I moved back. I went back home to where I lived. I got my wife and her visa and all those things set up. And then I was to move back to begin a conference tour for him as his, like I said, Latin American representative, going on these, basically, representing him in Latin American countries at these different conferences. And
So you were really inspired by the industry. You met this very famous man, and you wanted to work for him and with him. And do you have an agreement? Were you an employee, consultant, volunteer, or advisor? What was your role?
Sure. Yeah. Initially, I just wanted to get near them because it's kind of almost like being near the sun. You're kind of drawn to it, and everything else is drawn to it. So it's a good thing to be around. But that was the initial step. But, it was after he invited me up to Tennessee to, I stayed at the house, I think, for like 15 or 18 days with them, postponed my flights back home just while we kind of talked and figured out if we were compatible as friends, people, as colleagues, as him as my mentor. That's kind of what I was looking for. I was looking for a mentor almost to guide me through the crypto space. And while I was there, I knew that I should have trusted my judgment because it's not a good environment to be around. But you rationalize that it's worth the whatever stress at the time because of the long-term benefits that can come from a connection like of his sorts, especially in this industry. So I did sign a contract with them. I signed NDA clauses, and then I signed just paperwork stating to the effects that I wouldn't convey Team McAfee secrets to anybody, and that I was an employee representing them in Latin American conferences, but nothing as far as official payment stuff. It's all verbal with the team. John will say, look, you're this valuable to me because of this, and we've got this investment pool that we run together as a family. He almost calls the team a family, but in reality, he's just kind of switching out employees every 6 months or so, using this allure of a large payment.
I wanted to talk a little about that, because I find it to be a red flag. It seems like a lot of people who don't pay uses a lot of sweet talks to entice the person to stay and work for them. So he basically says you're valuable, and have like experience where people would tell me, hey, you're like a rock star, and they would, basically give you a lot of compliments, right? Because you're basically doing work for them. So, which might be normal too. I think in big corporations, when you get paychecks, they do give you compliments. So what happened next? Did you ever gotten paid? Were you gotten your first paycheck? Like, since we're talking about the topic is really labor abuse in startups, like, do you have any like gut feeling that something is not right? How does that feel?
Sure, absolutely. The gut feeling of it not being right was there, but I did never think it would be on the financial side of things. I knew that the environment necessarily wasn't good. It was a lot of alcohol, kind of crazy, lots of high anxiety. He tends to live very hyperbolically. He's the CIA's after me, the cartel's after me. He's got 3 or 4 security guards that live with him with guns. So that gives a sense of unease. But as far as the financial side, no, he's got this great status. His name, McAfee, McAfee antivirus. It's almost such a brand recognition that you trust it. And that's part of the allure of him that draws you in, to want to work for that name, because you think that, okay, well, like, I can go some places with it because of the connections. And that is true. I've done well because of the people that I met when I was there,
Yeah,
and when
and I think McAfee, it's known for security and protecting our computers from harm.
yeah, it's so odd. That's what I would think too. And this was 30 years ago when McAfee antivirus came out. And when I went back and I read a lot of old stuff, it kind of sounded very similar to the story, or to the to the picture that he's painting now in his life, with all of the drama. And back then it was, we have these viruses, they're going to attack us, and he had this great marketing plan to fear monger almost.
Mhm.
And that worked with the virus software at the time, that I don't even think was that quality. I think that he had other people, because I know that he couldn't operate an EOS wallet, for example, which is not a very complicated wallet to operate, but
I think he did well for the as an OG for that generation. So, but I'm just surprised that with all that wealth, right? Because sometimes in the startup world, you understand that people are making something new, and they may not get funded, so people might work for equity, right? And I think that is a risk for people, right? So you're basically granted shares, just like investors who invest in these startups, employees who get these options, are taking them and devoting their time for that risk, right? Because that company may or may not survive. However, if someone is promising to pay you in cash, you kind of expect that that person will pay you in cash, right?
absolutely. And that was, I think, the thing is, he did a good job of paying in cash on a weekly basis, while dangling the allure of a large lump payment being associated with Team McAfee. And I think that would, almost be associated the same thing in startups out in your area, where people are taking options, and, in a company that hasn't really proven itself or is waiting to get to the next level. So, uh, you know, I don't, I think there's two different things, because one is operating on a promise of good intention and
Yeah.
future, work. And whereas I don't think that there ever was a real large pool of money coming into Team McAfee. I think he just kind of took it and then would spend it on boats and planes and stuff like that.
Yeah. So let's talk about what happened. So in your situation, from your perspective, what happened?
Yeah, I think well, so when when things kind of went south and I realized I wasn't gonna be getting paid, and I just kind of pivoted. My wife was already got her visa, so we were going to come back to the States anyway. So that's what we did. And I kind of pivoted towards the DAP space, and I was able to do okay there and kind of use his name to get in my foot in almost, if that makes sense. And he since is on the run. He's on the run from the federal government right now for tax evasion, to the best of my knowledge. He was apprehended in the Dominican Republic, I think, on a boat with some guns, and then now he's in Russia or Iceland. I'm not sure. It's I think that the situation has proven the time that's passed since has proven that situation to be not unique. I think that it's happened a lot to a lot of other employees. I think he's got a variety of burned bridges behind him. And it's just, probably end up in prison or just kind of lonely in a country that's not extraditable.
So what do you do about the situation? So you didn't get paid, or you weren't paid fully, and do you talk to him about it? Do you demand for payment? What do you do, and how do you handle that situation?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not. He's not a very reasonable guy when things don't go his way. So I was initially threatened physically. I mean, he actually says he'll send goons. He sends these guys to your hotel room, and when I was in Miami at the time, and so I came back public. I said, okay, I showed on Twitter at the time people, look, this is the guy that you say is this great leader of the crypto space, when in reality he's really not a good dude, and when it comes down to it, he'll resort to violence and threatening people and things like that. And that was something that he had already he makes very well known when you come into the team, that's something that's how he operates. He operates by those rules of his morality, his game, and so that's, I mean, I'm not,
Were you scared?
sure, absolutely. My wife and I just kind of got into the States, and I knew that most of it is all just fluff and talk, but I also knew that he had Navy SEALs and ex-military guys that worked for him, some of whom were, didn't have great service records, and where they had, done some really ugly stuff back in Afghanistan. So I knew that they weren't always it's like he doesn't get professional security guys. He gets pit bulls that he can keep on a leash. And that's for a reason. So yeah, it is a fear factor for sure. I definitely was nervous, and I took precautions and steps to be intelligent, but um, I think I think it's all kind of BS. I think it all just fuels into his story ever since he left Belize and all that craziness. Um, it just kind of continues to feed that story to keep him relevant. He wants to stay relevant, and so he has to do crazy stuff.
Let's talk about, like what your expectation, if nothing has gone wrong, about what you had expected about working for McAfee.
Sure.
So I guess ideally, you would basically work with him, and he would pay you, and you would lead Latin America. And your role might, will improve or grow, and you'll be happy there, you and your wife. I mean, ideally, is that what you're expecting?
I would love to have been able to front run cryptocurrency adoption in Latin America. I think looking back now, we were too early. Even still now, I think it's almost too early. That's why I'm staying here in the States, kind of working on adoption here. I just think it's a little too early for Latin America right this second, other than emerging nations that have currency crises. Venezuela is obviously proving that Bitcoin can be a salvation. Argentina as well, but where I live, it's still kind of very stable. So um, ideally, yes, that would be great. I would love to just work there full time with quality names. If Binance wants to open an exchange in Latin America and I can work with CZ, he's got a very good reputation in the space. That's somebody that I would look up to and respect. I want to surround myself with people that are doing a lot better for the space than I am, so that I can kind of have something to work towards.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, regardless of all the people who are abusing labor or just recycling talent with not, without the intent to compensate or fulfill their promises, there are people out there who do, who care about the people that they work for them, who work for them, and who do compensate and who do keep their promises. And then there are startups, who might not get funded, and when they do get funded, they will pay. I think it kind of comes down to really the person and their personality, and their character, and which leads me to red flags. So it seems like the startups community, especially emerging technology in with blockchain and in cryptocurrency, where there's a lot of fraud. I think the rise of labor abuse is higher because so many people say that they're doing startups, and so many people say that they're compensating, yet they may not, or without the intent to. So there's a lot of wage thieves or time thieves in this industry. So what are some of the red flags you think that people should care about or look for when they're speaking with some of the founders who lead these teams?
Sure, that's a great question. I think, especially in the cryptocurrency space and more specifically the DApp space, you're going to want to look for teams that have quality products that are already online, solid white papers that have, they don't have to be native English, but they need to be grammatically correct. Everything needs to be perfect there. And really a basic factor is just take payment up front. If you're a quality content creator, producer of work, whatever, editor, whatever your specialty is that you're working within the particular cryptocurrency ecosystem, taking payment up front eliminates their ability to scam you. And that's a lesson that I've learned myself. If it's a bigger project with a larger, if it's a larger payment, let's say if it's, 5 figures or something, you're working on big stuff, then, half and half, that's fine. That's appropriate for both sides. And unfortunately, the trust hasn't been really built up in the cryptocurrency space yet to where that's not a necessity. I think taking payment almost has to happen now because there is so much prevalent fraud, and it's just a risk that it's not necessary to take if you're an actual contributing member to the community.
I think you're really brave, to kind of speak up. And what do you recommend that people do once they're defrauded? When founders refuse to pay them, what should they do? Or should they do something? I know that there's labor organizations, and so there are people who say that they would, pay with coins, and once they get listed on the exchange, they may not pay you for some reason.
Yep.
And there are people who say they may pay with cash, and for some reason they use the cash to pay for other things and not you. And, that is a priority item, right? So, or they might demean you. It just seems like people who is really back to sweet talking, people who might sweet talk you in the beginning, would like it when you're working and they don't intend to pay you. But when you ask for payment, then you're not cool anymore, right? So, how do you handle that?
Yeah, so just to clarify the question, how do I handle what exactly? Because I saw there were 2 parts of it, right?
Yeah.
How do I handle speaking out against a founder that has defrauded me? I think was your first question, and that's tough. It depends on the space, because you might be in a position where like I was, is in that speaking out against this person would kind of get you a lot of blowback, a lot of hate from the community. People would think that, oh, you're clout chasing for the negative. You're trying to get more followers. You're trying to do this. You're trying to do that. So I kind of, honestly, I stayed quiet. I did do that. I came out against him a little bit in the beginning, and then it just wasn't worth the blowback because I didn't really have the status and the space to fight all of his minions. And there might be other people in the startup industry that, maybe this is a big giant in the space that they've done wrong, and that, it might blow back on that person negatively to kind of speak out. So I would recommend or tell them to kind of go by your gut. That's what I do. I don't see my particular, so like McAfee, I don't see him on stage right now speaking at events. If he were, I would more than likely stand up and I would say something, just because now I have enough friends to where I feel like people know that I'm not lying and they would trust my word, to the point where I could say those things and feel comfortable that, any attack that comes my way, I can defend. So, it's a tough situation because you might not be in the best position to defend yourself. You might have to, and maybe you will, maybe your gut tells you to, speak up and shine a light on what's going on. And it forces this person to do the right thing. But oftentimes it makes people combative.
Yeah, I think there are people who, I mean, sometimes people think that it's kind of bad to say something,
For
um,
sure.
and yet at the same time, like, would you work for McAfee again? Would you work for McAfee again?
No, never.
Yeah.
Never. That would never happen. I don't think he and I could be in the same room together, to be honest. I think it would be a problem. He would say something, he might do something. I would, I'm not gonna, at this point, I'm not gonna just stand there, because I know it's abuse, and so, but no, I would never work for him again. And it's just, but that's because I know that he hasn't changed at all. I'm not saying that in a different situation, if he were to be able to acknowledge past wrongdoings and do right by me, that I couldn't, that's definitely a possibility, but I know that he hasn't changed as a person either. So that's why I answer that way.
Yeah, it's very hard. Um, so, anyways, so I guess, it really depends on a person's gut and their intuition, and what your, your his or her intuition tells him or her to do. Fair enough.
I mean, I know that's a very fluffy answer too, because, but it's just, yeah, it depends on the situation. Because
Yeah,
ask,
it depends on the context. So
sure, ask people that are you respect in your circle. If you have some friends, ask what you think they say. If 3 out of your 5 or 4 out of your 5 say, you know what, I'd speak up, then maybe that would be my gut. That's almost your gut too.
yeah, I mean, I think you work for a very famous person, so it's also a little bit different when the person is a little bit private, right? However, if that person, if there's a pattern where there's a series of people who are not getting paid, then there's an issue, right? Then it becomes a bigger issue. Um, anyways, I think, so I think there are some of the red flags here. I think you see a pattern there where there's like a recycling of people every 6 months. So there's like a lot of people who resigned. Um,
Fresh blood to trick, basically.
yeah, so there's like there's because the people who left, so there's like a lot of people who didn't know, and that's when ignorance is not bliss, I guess.
True. Yeah. The ability to manipulate the perception is strong, because if no one is saying anything, and they're just, okay, you know what, he did me wrong and I'll go on my way, and then the next person comes in and the next person, that's kind of where it becomes an issue. I even made a tweet about this, like, somebody said, what's your biggest complaint in the DApp space? And I said, it's us idolizing these scammers and bad actors in the space, so.
Yeah. Um, and what have you learned from this situation?
Mm, I think it's made me more skeptical of top people, of top influencers, But it's also taught me lots of great things because, now I've been able to, weed out some bad actors. I've had, experiences that I've kind of, gone through and then seen the red flags pop up and been able to avoid landmines. So that's been actually a good thing. I can say that that has helped. I try to take everything for the best. My wife is super optimistic, and she, we got pregnant and had our first child right after this. So that was a great thing. And that kind of was like, oh,
Congratulations.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. And so, and now everything's going great, and I'm around the right people in the crypto space that I want to be around, doing things that I enjoy doing. So I think it's all, worked out for the best, and who knows, I'm excited for the next couple of years.
Yeah, yeah. And Bob, what is that one piece of advice that you have for the community?
Trust, but verify, you know, this is a, game, and it's a game that's happening all around the world, and this, when I say the game, I mean the financial game, the life game, whatever you want to call it. Just trust but verify is a good baseline, advice for everything, because you never know.
Can I
And
can I ask you? I actually encountered a bunch of fraudulent projects or people in the space.
mhm.
And, I've heard of trust and verify. I think even when we have contracts with different projects, they might also not honor that. And, to some extent, even if you're referred by people that you trust, by your friends, these projects might not, the founders might not be, the people who keep their word, right? So let's talk a little about validation or verification. Like,
Mhm.
how would one verify?
Okay, so if we're talking about what, maybe working for a project or something like that, is that the example?
Yeah.
Because so what I do now, and I'll just kind of basically, I'll give it the same microscope test that I would give any other DApp. If a DApp comes to me and says, "Hey, we've got this great game and this great website, we want you to market for us. We're going to pay you $2,000 to make a video." Now, I'm pretty small YouTube, so $2,000 is a little bit more than I should be normally getting paid for a video. I could probably get 500 as, a normal, if I was going to do paid advertisement on revenue.
Hmm.
So what I would do is I'm going to go and I'm going to look at the website. I'm going to look at the white paper. I'm going to look at the team. I'm going to see their credentials. I'm going to look at if they've done prior projects, how those went. I'm going to really, like, that's when I say verify. I got to do my homework. It's my responsibility to make sure that I'm working for, honorable people. Because if I decide that I'm going to take this $2,000 and promote whatever website they have, and it ends up being a scam, well, now I've got myself into some hot water, because, you know, it's not necessarily legally hot water as long as I disclose that I was paid for my advertisement, but it's hot water in the sense of all your followers now that are watching your stuff just got screwed. And so it's my responsibility as a content creator, as a provider of videos and things like that, to make sure that I verify every single project that I'm going to do a review on. Just the same way, if I was going to work for somebody else, I would verify very, very well that I'm not wasting my time, because you know, money is great, and, material things are great, but, besides health, really time is the most valuable asset we have. I mean, it's finite, and, it's it's precious. So if you decided to give your time to another company, it better be because you think that you can help them and they can help you.
Yeah, and that's why I said time thieves, because I
Yes.
don't think you and I are not nonprofits, right? We're not nonprofits. So it
I'm
really,
for profit Bob.
yes. Bob. Oh, where's Alice? Um but time is really our most important asset, and I think it's really abusive, when founders make promises and they don't honor them, especially when they have the resources to. um, and the project is listed on the exchange, or they have raised money. It's
Exactly.
very
Yeah.
interesting, but
People
yet,
spending money. They've watched that they've spent money recently on, they got a new car, a new house, and you are waiting for your payment. Super fun.
yeah, they raise like 5, 10 million, and you haven't gotten paid yet. Like,
Your cell phone bill's overdue. Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
well, you must be not feeling well now. Why are you asking for payment?
And then you feel bad asking for what you're owed. And if you do get paid, it's almost like you feel so gratitude, like thank you so much for paying me for the work that I already did and you already owed me for. But now I have to feel like, oh, what a crappy feeling.
um, on a high note, I really appreciate your time, and
Absolutely, this was enjoyable for sure.
yeah, and experience in sharing with the community. I think a lot of people in the space is experiencing this, so it's kind of nice to hear your story. And and your story is particularly awesome because McAfee is very famous, and a lot of times when we think that when we work for someone famous, we're gonna get paid, but that may not necessarily be true. I think I advise a very famous founder, and it's been a couple years and I haven't even gotten paid yet. He's a co-founder of a unicorn, and
Really?
yeah, yeah. So, and that's one of the reason why I was just like, wow. I think your story and a few of the other stories, they have things in common, and
Right.
and a lot of the famous people have money, and they have resources, and you think that that if they could invest in other companies, and if they could go on stage and speak in front of a lot of people, that they would at least keep their word.
It's interesting. I think it's a lot of narcissism at the top.
Hey, it might be power, we don't know.
Yeah, power corrupts, probably. Yeah,
Corrupts corruptly. I mean, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and then
exactly.
power.
Yes,
And even without absolute power, it's not the money, it's the power, and I think that's interesting.
for sure. No,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I look really forward to meeting you next week, or it's in 2 weeks now, right?
Yep,
3 weeks. 3 weeks. So yeah.
in 2 weeks. I will see you soon then. Thank you for your time, Bob.
You're very welcome, Michelle. Take care. Have a great night. And yeah, I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye bye.
Bye bye.